Modern tape recorders have many adjustments to make sure the recording and playback of tapes is correct. Only when all of these controls are properly set will we get the same sound out of the machine as we put in without excessive noise, distortion, and tone coloration. Setting these controls so that the recorder will properly record onto the type of tape that is being used and play back properly is called alignment. The only way we know how the recorder is recording is to play back the recording after it is made. If something is off, it could be in the recording or in the playback. The tape could be recorded perfectly, but an improper playback adjustment could make it sound bad. Because of this, we set the playback adjustments first. To do this, we use a calibration tape that has been recorded perfectly. After we set the playback controls, we will not touch them and try to record tones that match the calibration tape, setting the record controls as necessary. Before any alignment can be done, the tape heads on the tape machine must be properly cleaned and demagnetized. If the heads are dirty, the tape will not make good contact and we will lose part of the signal, especially the treble frequencies. Tape heads can become partially magnetized by recording or playing back recordings. If the heads have been partially magnetized, alignment settings could be affected. Because of this, a recorder is demagnetized and cleaned at least every 10 hours of recording or 20 hours of playback, and just before any alignment. To demagnetize the heads, a head demagnetizer is used that puts out a very strong, varying magnetic field. Turn off the power to the recorder before demagnetizing it because the signal put out by a demagnetizer is so strong it can burn out the electronics of the recorder if put near the heads while the recorder is on. When the head demagnetizer is activated, never bring it closer than 2 feet from a tape recording because the field could erase part of the recording. Slowly bring the activated head demagnetizer to the head and wipe it over the head surface. Remove it slowly. The slow movement properly removes stray magnetism, whereas fast movement could actually magnetize the head. Repeat this process for each head and any other metal piece or guide in the tape path. Clean the heads by dipping a double-sided Q-tip into 90% or better isopropyl alcohol. Wipe the wet tip over the head's surface and dry with a dry tip. The wet tip loosens particles and then the dry tip removes them. Repeat for other heads and guides the tape is in contact with. Activate the safety switch on the machine and put it into play. Alternately, wipe the capstan and pinch roller with wet and dry tip until clean. Now the heads are cleaned and demagnetized. We are ready to proceed with the playback alignment. The first tone we will play back will be 1,000 Hertz recorded at normal operating level, which is at the end of the calibration tape. We will set our reproduce control so that each meter reads 0 while playing back the tone. While we're at this tone, we should set our sel-sync playback level control. During overdubbing, the previously recorded tracks will be played back from the record head. This is sync playback, which should also play back at a normal operating level. To set the sync playback level, we must put the machine in sync playback. On our Ampex MM1000, we do this by placing the front panel control to remote and setting the individual tracks to sync playback at the remote panel and setting the master switch to sync. While the tone is playing, we adjust the sync gain control on the sync panel located below the transport controls for the machine. Be sure to adjust the bottom control, which is the sync gain control. After adjusting the reproduce level and the sync gain controls, switching the machine between normal and sync playback should result in no level change. This is most easily accomplished by switching between local and remote control of the machine while the remote panel is set for sync playback. The second tone we will check is a 10 kHz tone, which is at the leader on our calibration tape. While playing back this tone, we will adjust the playback equalization. Since we are aligning the machine at 15 IPS, we will use the control labeled Playback, Low Speed, High Frequency, which is the third control from the top of the right-hand card in each electronics. If we were adjusting for 30 IPS, we would use the Playback High Speed, High Frequency control. We will not adjust the low frequency reproduce control from the calibration tape because of fringing. We are now finished adjusting all the tones that we can with the calibration tape. The controls that we adjusted will be left in the position adjusted. Anytime a control is accidentally moved after it is adjusted, we would have to back up in the alignment procedure to the point where we adjusted that control. Each brand and type of tape requires different adjustment of the record alignment controls. So it is important that we use the brand and type of tape that we will be using in the recording session to align the machine. If we should then change the type of tape we use, we would have to realign using the new type of tape. During all record adjustments, we will place the machine in record with a calibrated tone being fed to the tape machine. The machine is set up to read playback. We are concerned with adjusting the record controls so that it will record tones to playback the same as the calibration tape. Most recording consoles have a tone oscillator built into them which will feed the test tones to all tracks of the tape machine. To get test tones out of our console, you must turn on the tone switch and the oscillator. Different frequencies are obtained by setting the frequency control and the multiplier control. To obtain a 1000 Hz tone, set the frequency control to 10 and the multiplier control to 100. Use the level control of the oscillator so that the stereo left and right meters read 0 while the machine is in record. If you adjust the level controls before the machine is put in record, they will change once the recorder starts. Each time you change the frequency of the tone oscillator, you must check your level and reset if necessary. The first record alignment control we will be setting is the bias control. This is because the bias affects all other record adjustments. If we feed a tone into the machine while it is recording with the bias adjust control turned all the way down, we will get a very low level tone recorded. Slowly increasing the bias adjustment will result in the tone being recorded at a higher and higher level, and then again a lower level. Thus, if our bias adjustment control is set too high or too low, we will record at a low level. Setting the bias control so that the maximum level will be recorded is called peaking the bias. Peaking the bias when feeding the machine with 1000 Hz at normal level will roughly set the bias on any recorder with any tape. Tape machine manufacturers recommend an alternate method of setting the bias. This method involves using a high-frequency test signal and peaking the bias, and then increasing the bias until the needle drops by a certain number of dB. There are many problems in using this method for the day-to-day operations of a recording engineer. One of the problems is that the amount of overbias, the amount that the needle has to drop back down, varies according to the brand of the tape machine and the type of tape formulation being used. The test frequency has to be changed according to the tape speed that is being used. In addition, the peak at the high frequency test signal is extremely narrow, and it requires extra care and time to set the bias. As a result of these problems, the Recording Institute recommends a universal method of aligning tape machines' bias settings that works in 95% of the cases. To do this, you simply peak the bias at 1 kHz and then increase the bias control until the needle drops 1/4 of a dB. In cases where this bias method does not work, it is recommended that you follow the instructions in the tape machine's operational manual. After adjusting the bias, we are ready to set the record level. Feed 1000 Hertz at 0 level into the recorder while it is in record, and adjust the record level control so that it reads 0 on the machine's meter. The machine is set up to record at the proper level with the type of tape that you are using. The next record alignment control we'll set will be for the record equalization. This control makes sure that the high frequencies are recorded at the proper level. This control is found at the bottom of the middle of the electronics card. To set this control, feed 10 kilohertz into the machine at 0 level while it is recording, and adjust the record EQ low speed control so that the tone is recorded at a 0 level. We are now done with our record calibration. The low frequencies will usually record correctly on a tape machine, but may not play back correctly. Because of this, we record a low frequency tone and set the low frequency playback control to play back the tone at 0. In our machine, set the tone oscillator to 60 Hertz and feed it to the machine while it is recording at 0 level. Adjust the low frequency reproduce control low speed for 0 on the machine's meter. This control is on the bottom of the right-hand electronics card. There is one more control we need to adjust before the machine is in alignment, the record calibration control. This control makes the machine's meters read the same when it is reading reproduce or input. The record calibration control on our machine is located at the top of the middle card in the machine's electronics. Stop the machine and put the electronics output selector switch to input. With the machine stopped, feed 1000 Hertz into it at 0 level and adjust the record calibrate control so that the machine's meter reads 0. This completes the alignment. Be sure to put the machine's output selector switch back to reproduce. When doing a basic recording session, most studios record calibration tones at the top of the reel so that the machine can be set back to the alignment that was used during the recording session, and other studios receiving the tape may do the same. If a studio receives a tape without tones on it, it does not reflect well on the studio or the recording engineer that made the original recording. To record these tones, take the tape back to the top of the reel that you're going to use. Record 10 to 15 seconds each of 1000 Hertz, 10 kilohertz, 100 Hertz, and the low frequency tone that you used for alignment. Then let 60 seconds of blank tape go by before you record the first tape. This will provide a record pad. A record pad is a blank piece of tape used to record tones to make sure the recorder that is being used is in the same alignment that was used for the session. Some studios will leave 60 seconds of blank tape at the end of the reel for a record pad. You're now ready to do a recording session. Remember that a properly aligned recorder is essential to a good recording session.